Welcome to What is a Conscious Brand? I have Daniel Kurzrock here from ReGrained. And Daniel, you call yourself Chief Grain Officer?
That's right. Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Right on, right on. So first of all, being the co-founder of ReGrained, what is ReGrained? How did it start to be what it is?
Sure. Yeah. So ReGrained is a food company. We're really focused on our primary activity is reducing food waste through something we call edible upcycling. What does that mean? Well, what we're doing is we're working with overlooked, kind of underutilized potential ingredients and bringing them into the food system. So right now, we're working with breweries on taking the nutritious grain that's created every time they make a batch of beer. Basically, every time you make beer, the breweries are extracting the sugar and it's concentrating all the protein and fiber and prebiotics into what is currently handled like a byproduct. There's two main things that we do. The first is the creation of this unique supply chain. So we actually have a technology that we developed with the USDA to take the grain as it comes out of the brewery and stabilize it and turn it into something that's not only safe for humans, but that is really delicious and versatile. And then we have a brand, which is what most people know us by. We make a line of snack bars, ReGrained bars, and we have a salty snack line coming out in a bit. And we're also doing some work with other food companies to incorporate this ingredient, and make it really ubiquitous in the marketplace.
Wow, that's amazing. So your business model is edible upcycling.
Yes.
So you're the perfect person to have on this show, and I'd love to ask you what is a conscious brand?
Sure. I mean, so for us, when we think about being a conscious brand, a lot of what it comes down to is understanding that no business or person for that matter is in a silo, or we're all a part of this greater system, and it's a system with with finite resources. And for us, like, our mission statement is to better align the food we eat with the planet we love, which I think really captures our outlook on what it means to be a conscious company. The way that we do that, going a step deeper, is to improve the way that we value the resources that support all life. And then edible upcycling is our means of doing that. So really baked core into our business model is this idea that we can improve the way that we value food, and we can do more with less. And take a look at nature for inspiration, right? In nature, there is no waste. For us, our philosophy is that it's kind of the and philosophy. So we can make profit and do good. And we are for profit, but not just for profit. And I'm certainly not the first person to have said that. There's a lot of really inspiring leaders that have come before me that have help pave the road for the entrepreneurial approach that we've really taken from day one here.
Right on. So, building ReGrained from the ground up and using it as a force for good, and, maximizing the good as opposed to looking at reducing the bad. What sort of roadblocks, or maybe what are your top two roadblocks, the biggest roadblocks that you've had in becoming a conscious brand?
Yeah, it's a interesting question, because when I hear that, all I can think of is that we started as a conscious brand and we're trying to make sure that can work as we scale, right? Which, and there's certainly some challenges in that, but it's also where a lot of our value is derived from. I think what's really challenging when being a conscious brand is really understanding what the hierarchy is, I guess, of your values and of your mission. So we have a lot of things that we care a lot about, and we want to make choices at every turn that really drive us towards making an impact across those missions. As a company, you could say, drilling down from climate change, we care a lot about waste, right? And the impacts of waste and the opportunities in waste. And for waste, for us, it's both food waste and it's also packaging waste. But and what happens when you have to choose which one's more important between the two? Like, if we've got stale product out there that's in compostable packaging, is that taking away from our core mission of creating markets and demand to help reduce food waste? When you have a lot of missions and a lot of things that you care about, when you're forced by kind of external circumstances to prioritize them, how you approach doing that, I think is one of those kinds of things that will keep a CEO like me up at night.
What sort of leadership is required for running a company like ReGrained, a conscious brand?
Yeah, it's leadership that focuses on. I think you need to be a systems thinker, right? So not just thinking about, thinking about everything that you're doing and the larger systems that it affects, and also, creating this like long view, like, is really what I'm getting at here. Of, not so much of business is focused on, quarterly earnings and things like that, right? And as a leader of a conscious brand, you have to take a longer view, which means potentially being, more thoughtful about what kinds of investors you take, maybe,
Mhm.
or what your strategy is for growing, and is growth a means or an ends, right, for your business. So there's a lot of these kind of almost esoteric like questions that you got to wrestle with as the commander in chief of a brand that is trying to do something that is maybe harder than it should be. Doing doing the right thing that's good by the planet, and good by people, and also, good for the bottom line. I
And
think.
you really have to have those pieces integrated, because a lot of the time, just being good for the planet is not enough.
Hmm.
Being good for your people is not enough. And then if you're not good for the bottom line, you can't really support those other initiatives. And even if you bring in that external funding that wants a high return very quickly, that's going to be compromised. So yeah, I could see just, it takes a lot of compassion is what I get from you as a leader, as well as the vulnerability and just transparency to say this is how it is.
Totally. Yeah. And what I would add to that is, an ability to really meet different audiences, different stakeholders where they are,
Hmm.
um, and find the part of the mission that is going to, relate to them. So if we're talking to a brewery, the conversation might be different with them than when we're talking to a food industry partner, someone who has the, this supply chain versus someone who we want to use it. Right.
Yeah, and I like that, meeting your consumer where they're at, or your audience where they're at. And then we were both at Escabona this year. One thing I took away from the opening night was just that generative listening. So listening with new ears each time,
Yeah.
not hearing what I think you're going to say, but really hearing what you are saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what advice would you give a new or emerging conscious brand?
Mm. I definitely still am in that bucket of an emerging conscious brand. I would say, as a founder, it's really important to create moments of what I think of as kind of like micro perspective. So it's not always, you're not going to be able to take a lot of big vacations and things like that. But what you can do is go for long bike rides or walks or ski, or, whatever it is that gives, kind of takes you, meditate, something that takes you away from the day to day, because those are the moments that really ground you back in what you're doing. And it's really important to create that space for you to really think. You get so caught up in doing and working in the business that, it's kind of a slippery slope to then completely, lose the ability to work on the business.
Hmm.
There's all these different, things that pull at our attention. And, for me, I get the most value out of when I'm able to just kind of separate completely from working in the business for periods of time, to take that step back and, um, make sure that, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of cliches for this: see the forest for the trees, all that, is just critical when you're emerging. And I see too many of my peers not taking that time to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Just having that grounding moment. And, there's sayings out there. Robert Keegan, I believe, coined this one, but an organization can't be any more conscious than the leadership. So as a leader, how are we being contemplative and processing all that information, allowing for new ideas to emerge? And really, yeah, it is taking that space, whether it's a bike ride, a walk, a meditation, just
Yeah.
stilling ourselves to let go so we can let come in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think another angle that I want to throw into our discussion here about this is to be open as an emerging brand to discussions with larger partners in the space.
Hmm.
A lot of these companies are some of the ones that got us in this mess, arguably, right, in the first place. And it's really easy to be caught up in the emotion of that and forget that there's people that are at these companies too that are also humans, and many of them are conscious. Be open to these conversations so that you can be the little tugboat that is moving, a bigger industry, an industry that's much bigger than yourself too. Every industry has big players, and in some cases they can be really key partners that can be really helpful, and something that we've been really open to from the beginning. And I'm really glad that we have been, and I attribute a lot of our success so far to you know to not just writing companies off because they
Yeah, they're that company, and it's an us or, and I like that and statement that you said, and also that juxtaposition of being radically open and having that micro perspective, because somewhere in between, that's where these concepts will emerge, and we don't know what we don't know, and others don't know what they don't know, right? So I really love that that openness. Any last thoughts or words that you want to share?
No, I mean, I just think today, in these today, it's easy to kind of not be terribly optimistic. There's a lot of really crazy things that are happening, and uh, I just think it's so important that we really, pay attention to everything that's happening, but also where we can make our world a little bit smaller, and look at what we can control and the impacts that we can have in our media. It's kind of that idea of thinking globally and acting locally. Be relentlessly focused on making that impact, and don't be so discouraged by everything big picture that's happening, because I think across the longer time frame it adds up to something that we can't even begin to have a perspective on from where we sit today.
Right on. And there is no silver bullet. It's all these little micro turns to steer that big ship. So,
Exactly.
all right. Thanks so much, Daniel.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
love what you're doing at ReGrained.
Thanks so much.